March 23, 1945. 06:42 hours. Remagen Bridge, Rhine River, Germany. The Panther tank's turret exploded from the inside. No warning. No incoming artillery shell. No anti-tank rockets streaking across the morning sky. Just a spark on the rear deck, then fire, then hell. Flames shot 15 feet into the cold air. Black smoke rolled across the defensive line. The 54-ton machine became a crematorium in seconds. 5 men inside. None escaped. 300 meters away, Corporal Kurt Brenner watched through his binoculars. Veteran of the Eastern Front, 28 years old. He'd seen tanks destroyed before, but not like this. This was the 7th tank in 2 days. Each time the same pattern. A single shot from across the river, a small impact, then catastrophic internal explosion. The Americans had deployed something the Wehrmacht had never encountered, something that violated every assumption about small arms capability. And the man behind it? A machinist from Akron, Ohio, who'd never fired a gun before enlisting. Staff Sergeant Garrett Holloway, 28 years old, 5'10", 147 pounds. By war's end, he would destroy 43 German armored vehicles, using a weapon nobody believed could kill tanks. The Germans called his ammunition Teufelsschüsse, devil shots, bullets that exploded inside steel. But this story isn't about the ammunition. It's about how one man's obsession with precision transformed a standard machine gun into the most cost-effective tank killer of World War II. Each kill cost $1.75 per round. Each German Panther tank cost $50,000. The mathematics were undeniable. But before Garrett Holloway could prove those mathematics on the battlefield, he first had to survive being told his idea was insane. December 1944. The Hurtgen Forest. 50 square miles of dense evergreen forest along the German-Belgian border. The Americans called it the meat grinder. The Germans called it the death factory. Both were accurate. The 28th Infantry Division went into the Hurtgen in early November with 16,000 men. 10 days later, they came out with 62% casualties. 6,184 Americans killed, wounded, or missing. The 9th Infantry Division replaced them. 2 weeks later, similar losses. Everywhere the problem was the same. German armor dominated. Panzer Mark IV tanks, Panther tanks, Tiger tanks, all positioned at ranges between 600 and 800 yards, just beyond the effective range of American infantry weapons. American bazooka teams couldn't get close enough. Sherman tanks were outgunned and outmaneuvered in the dense forest. Artillery support was limited by the thick canopy. And the Germans? They sat in hull-down positions and systematically destroyed everything that moved. The casualty rates were catastrophic. In some companies, officer turnover reached 300% in 2 weeks. Entire platoons were wiped out in single engagements. The forest floor was carpeted with American dead, and nobody had an answer. Nobody except a man who wasn't supposed to be thinking about tactics at all. Garrett Holloway wasn't a soldier by nature. He was a machinist, born in Akron, Ohio in 1917. By age 10, he was already working beside his father in the machine shop at Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. His father taught him a simple principle that would define his entire life. Measure twice, cut once, and never, ever guess. By 1935, Garrett had become what his father dreamed of, a master machinist. Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Portsmouth, Virginia. Building submarine drive shafts, components for destroyer engines. The tolerance for these parts wasn't measured in thousandths of an inch. It was measured in 10 thousandths. 0.0001 inch, the width of a human red blood cell.
Holloway could cut to that tolerance consistently, day after day. His supervisor once asked him how he maintained such precision. Holloway's answer was simple. "I pretend every part I make is the one that will save my life someday." December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Holloway heard the news on the radio while working late in the shipyard. He set down his tools, walked outside into the cold Virginia night, stared at the submarines in dry dock. All of it suddenly meaningless. 3 days later, Garrett Holloway enlisted in the United States Army. He was 24 years old, underweight for his height, no combat experience. The recruiter asked what skills he had. "I'm a machinist. I work with precision equipment. We'll find a use for that." Fort Benning, Georgia, basic training. Holloway learned to march, to disassemble an M1 Garand in 90 seconds, to low crawl under barbed wire while instructors fired live ammunition 2 feet above his head. He hated every minute of it. This wasn't precision. This was chaos. Then they introduced him to the Browning M2 heavy machine gun, 50 caliber, 40 inches long, 84 pounds unloaded. Effective range against infantry, 1 mile. Rate of fire, 450 rounds per minute. The weapons instructor demonstrated the gun's operation. This weapon can penetrate light armor, destroy aircraft, suppress enemy positions at extreme range. But it's only effective if you understand ballistics. At 500 yards, the bullet drops 24 inches. At 1,000 yards, it drops 72 inches. You need to compensate. Aim high, account for wind, calculate trajectory. For the first time since enlisting, Garrett Holloway smiled. This was mathematics. This was precision. This was something he understood. By December 1944, Holloway had been in combat for 4 months. He'd watched American tanks burn. He'd watched German armor sit at 800 yards and systematically destroy American positions. He'd watched men die because American weapons couldn't reach the enemy. And every night, he sat in frozen foxholes and thought about precision, about tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch, about how his M2 Browning could throw a 50 caliber bullet accurately to a mile. But accuracy meant nothing if you couldn't penetrate the target. December 5th, supply depot 12 miles behind the front lines. Holloway volunteered to help transport ammunition. While loading crates onto a truck, he noticed something odd. A stack of ammunition boxes marked differently from the others. Standard boxes were stamped 50 caliber ball or 50 caliber armor piercing. These boxes were stamped M8 API, aircraft use only. Holloway stopped, asked the supply sergeant about them. Sergeant Everett Shaw, 26 years old, an armorer before the war. "Those are M8 armor-piercing incendiary rounds, made for aircraft machine guns on P-38s and B-17s. They penetrate aircraft skin, then explode inside. Set fuel tanks on fire." Holloway set down the crate he'd been carrying. "Explode?" Shaw nodded. "Yeah, there's a small incendiary charge inside the bullet. When it penetrates something, friction ignites the charge. Burns at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to melt steel. Has anyone ever tried using these against tanks?" Shaw laughed. "Against tanks? Why would you? These are for planes." Holloway stared at the boxes. Aircraft skin was thin, aluminum, maybe 3 millimeters thick. Tank armor was different, steel, thick. But not all armor was equal. Engine decks, turret tops, rear plates, those were thinner. 20 to 30 millimeters. Still thick, but maybe thin enough. "How many rounds do we have?" Shaw checked his inventory sheet.
About 5,000 rounds sitting here since September. I'm supposed to ship them back stateside next month. What if they got lost before then? Shaw looked up sharply, studied Holloway for a long moment, then smiled.
I can probably misplace 50 rounds. See if they work. December 7th, 1944. 2 years to the day after Pearl Harbor. Holloway requested permission to conduct weapons maintenance at an abandoned German position half a mile from American lines. He brought his M2, his loader Private First Class Dixon, and targeted a destroyed German half-track that sat in a clearing, victim of American artillery 3 weeks earlier. The half-track's armor was 10 millimeters thick. Holloway loaded a belt with 5 M8 rounds, positioned the M2 at 200 yards, aimed at the half-track's side panel, and fired. The first round struck the armor with a sharp crack. Then came a second sound, smaller, muffled. An explosion from inside the half-track. Holloway and Dixon stared at each other. They moved closer, examined the impact point. There was a small hole in the armor, 12.7 millimeters, 50 caliber. Around the hole, the metal was scorched black. Inside the half-track, they found the answer. The bullet had penetrated the armor completely. On the interior wall, opposite the entry hole, there was a blast pattern, scorch marks, melted metal. The incendiary charge had detonated after penetration. This wasn't aluminum aircraft skin. This was steel armor, and the M8 round had gone through it like paper. Holloway's hands trembled as he examined the remaining rounds. His machinist brain started calculating. 10 millimeters of armor penetrated at 200 yards. What about 500 yards? What about the thinner armor on tank engine decks? What about turret rings, where the metal had to be thin enough to allow rotation? This ammunition could kill tanks. Not might. Could. And nobody knew about it, because nobody had thought to try. But when Holloway requested 200 rounds of M8 API from Captain Aldrich the next morning, he hit a wall. The captain was 48 years old, career Army, a good officer, fair, competent, but conservative. Sergeant, those rounds cost $1.75 each. Standard ball ammunition costs 11 cents. That's a 16-to-1 cost difference. Request denied. Sir, I've tested them. They can penetrate German armor. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Those rounds are allocated for aircraft use only. Removing them from supply without proper requisition is theft of military property. But sir, they work. Might work is not justification for violating supply protocols. If I find out you've obtained more API rounds without authorization, I'll have you court-martialed. Is that clear? Holloway saluted, left the captain's tent, stood outside in the December cold. The rule book was written by people who'd never operated the machinery. Sometimes you had to break the rules to make the machine work. He walked back to the supply depot, found Sergeant Shaw. I need 500 rounds. Your CO approved that? My CO doesn't understand what we have here, but he will after I show him. Shaw studied him for a moment, then started loading crates. 500 rounds of M8 API. You better be right, Garrett. I'm not wrong. The mathematics says it will work, and mathematics doesn't lie. But proving the mathematics would require Holloway to do something forbidden, to engage enemy armor without orders, to risk court-martial, to bet his life and his career on calculations made in a frozen foxhole. And in Part 2, we'll see exactly how those calculations changed the course of the war when Garrett Holloway fired his first shot at a German Panther tank and discovered that sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones that save the most lives. December 1944.
Garrett Holloway, a machinist from Akron, had discovered something the entire United States Army had missed. M8 armor-piercing incendiary rounds, designed for aircraft, could penetrate tank armor.
He'd proven it on a destroyed German half-track. 10 millimeters of steel, penetrated, exploded from inside. But proving it in secret and convincing the Army to adopt it were two completely different wars. Captain Aldrich had threatened him with court-martial. 500 rounds of unauthorized ammunition sat hidden in his foxhole, and German Panther tanks continued to slaughter American infantry at 800 yards with absolute impunity. The 28th Infantry Division had just lost another 400 men in 48 hours. The 9th was being chewed apart in the Hurtgen Forest. Every hour of delay meant more American deaths. But between Holloway and saving those lives stood something more dangerous than German armor: United States Army bureaucracy. And this is where everything got worse. December 9th, 1944, 0612 hours. Garrett Holloway didn't wait for permission. 3 German Panzer IV tanks appeared on the Eastern Road, 850 yards away. His calculations were already complete. Bullet drop, 40 inches. Wind drift, 6 inches. Engine deck vulnerable. 20 millimeters of armor. He loaded the belt. 4 M8 API. 1 armor-piercing, 1 tracer. Repeat. Dixon fed the ammunition into the Browning M2. The lead panzer stopped, hull down behind a low rise. Only the turret visible. Holloway waited. Finger on trigger. Not pulling, just touching. The mathematics demanded patience. The tank rotated, searching for targets. As it turned, the rear deck came into view. Holloway aimed 4 feet high, 6 inches left, and fired. 7-round burst. Pause. Observe. Through the iron sights, he saw sparks on the tank's rear deck. Most rounds missed, but the 5th round hit. Spark, flash, smoke. Black smoke pouring from the engine compartment. Flames appeared, small at first, then growing. The hatches flew open. 5 men bailed out. The explosion was a deep, concussive thump Holloway felt in his chest from 800 yards away. He'd done it. Actually done it. The mathematics had worked. Within an hour, Captain Aldrich stood at Holloway's position. The captain stared at the burning Panzer in the distance, then at Holloway, then at the M2. His face was unreadable. "Sergeant, did you destroy that tank?" "Yes, sir. With your machine gun. Using ammunition you obtained without authorization?" "Yes, sir." Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, voice tight with controlled anger. "You disobeyed a direct order. You conducted unauthorized combat operations. You violated supply protocols. Under normal circumstances, I would have you arrested right now." Holloway stood at attention, said nothing, but Aldrich continued. "However, that burning tank represents $50,000 of German war material, destroyed with less than $2 worth of ammunition." He turned to face Holloway directly. "I'm not going to court-martial you, Sergeant. I'm going to watch you very carefully. Because if this works consistently, you've just changed modern warfare. And if it doesn't, you've wasted critical resources and endangered your unit. You get one more chance. 1. Show me this wasn't luck." But showing Aldrich wasn't enough. Word reached division headquarters. December 10th, a delegation arrived. Not to congratulate Holloway, to investigate him. Major William Kramer, 43 years old, West Point graduate,
Career officer with zero combat experience, but extensive experience crushing innovation that threatened established doctrine. He brought 2 lieutenant colonels with him. All 3 wore spotless uniforms. All 3 looked at Holloway like he was a problem to be solved. Major Kramer spoke without preamble. "Sergeant Holloway, you claim to have destroyed a German Panzer IV tank with a 50 caliber machine gun." "That's correct, sir." "Using ammunition not allocated for ground combat." "Correct, sir." "Do you understand that M8 API rounds are reserved exclusively for aircraft use?" "There are procurement protocols, supply chain regulations, international agreements about ammunition allocation." "Yes, sir." "Then explain to me why you thought you had the authority to circumvent those protocols." Holloway kept his voice level. "Sir, I didn't circumvent anything. I identified a capability gap and applied existing resources to fill it. Those rounds were sitting in a depot doing nothing, while German tanks were killing Americans every day. I ran the calculations. The M8 round can penetrate 20 to 30 millimeters of armor. Tank engine decks are exactly that thickness." Major Kramer cut him off. "Calculations? You're a sergeant, a machinist. You're not an ordnance engineer. You're not qualified to make those determinations." "With respect, sir, the Germans don't care about my qualifications. They care that their tanks are burning." Kramer's face reddened. This is exactly the kind of cowboy mentality that gets soldiers killed. One lucky shot doesn't prove anything. It could have been a mechanical failure, a fuel leak, any number of factors. You've drawn conclusions from insufficient data, and you're asking me to authorize widespread use of expensive, specialized ammunition based on those conclusions. That's not how the Army works, Sergeant. We have procedures, testing protocols, approval processes. These exist for a reason. Holloway felt his jaw tighten, but kept his voice calm. How many procedures did the 28th Infantry Division follow while they lost 6,000 men in the Hurtgen? How many testing protocols do we need while American soldiers die because we can't kill tanks? Sir, I'm not asking for medals. I'm asking for permission to save lives. The room went silent. One of the lieutenant colonels cleared his throat. Major, perhaps we should at least observe a demonstration. Kramer turned sharply. We don't have time for demonstrations. We have a war to fight. The lieutenant colonel persisted. Sir, if there's even a chance this technique is viable, the potential impact on casualty rates would be significant. Cost analysis alone suggests we should investigate further. $50,000 tank destroyed with $2 ammunition? That's a ratio worth examining. Kramer stared at Holloway. Fine, you get your demonstration, but it will be conducted under controlled conditions with proper oversight. You will provide a detailed written explanation of your methodology. You will demonstrate the technique on multiple targets at various ranges. And if this fails, if this turns out to be luck or exaggeration, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of this war counting inventory in a supply depot. Is that clear? Crystal clear, sir. But Holloway had found an unexpected ally. The lieutenant colonel who'd spoken up was named Patterson, 41 years old, engineering background. Unlike Kramer, Patterson had actually read Holloway's initial report. That night, Patterson found Holloway in his foxhole. Sergeant, I went through your calculations. Your ballistic compensations are accurate. Your armor penetration estimates match the technical specifications for M8 API rounds. You understand what you've discovered here? Sir, I understand that mathematics doesn't care about rank or regulations. Patterson smiled slightly. Major Kramer thinks you're a troublemaker, but I think you're a problem solver. And right now, we need problem solvers more than we need people who follow outdated protocols. He handed Holloway a requisition form. This authorizes you to draw 200 rounds of M8 API for official testing. The demonstration is scheduled for December 14th, 4 days from now. You'll have an audience of staff officers, ordnance experts, and probably some people who want to see you fail. Don't fail. I won't, sir. December 14th, 1944.
0900 hours.
The testing ground was a cleared field 3 miles behind the front lines. Holloway stood beside his M2 Browning, surrounded by 27 observers. Major Kramer, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson, various captains and majors, 3 ordnance specialists from Aberdeen Proving Ground, all of them skeptical, all of them watching. The targets were 3 destroyed German vehicles, 1 half-track at 400 yards, 1 Panzer IV at 600 yards, 1 Panther at 800 yards. The rules were simple. Holloway had to achieve penetration and internal detonation on all 3 targets. First target, the half-track, 400 yards. Light armor, 10 millimeters. Should be the easiest shot. Holloway loaded his belt, checked his calculations. Wind, 5 miles per hour left to right. Temperature, 32 degrees. Bullet drop at 400 yards, 12 inches. He aimed, compensated, and fired. 5-round burst. The 3rd round penetrated. The observers saw the flash through their binoculars. The incendiary charge detonating inside the vehicle, scorch marks visible around the entry hole. One of the ordnance specialists spoke. "Lucky shot. The half-track armor is thin. Aircraft aluminum. Let's see him do it on real tank armor." Holloway moved to the second target, Panzer IV at 600 yards. Side armor, 30 millimeters, thicker than the half-track. He recalculated. Bullet drop, 24 inches. Wind drift, 4 inches. Aimed, fired. 7-round burst. The 4th round penetrated. Another flash, another detonation. The observers murmured among themselves. Major Kramer's expression remained unchanged. The Panther, 800 yards. That's the real test. Holloway approached the final target, the Panther. 80 millimeters of frontal armor, impossible to penetrate with .50 caliber. But the engine deck, only 20 millimeters. He'd hit this exact shot 4 days ago in actual combat, but that had been under pressure, adrenaline, chaos. This was different. Cold, clinical. 27 people watching, waiting for failure. He calculated. 800 yards. Bullet drop, 40 inches. Wind drift, 6 inches. The mathematics were clear. But his hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. From the weight of what failure would mean. Every American who would die because the Army refused to adopt this technique. He steadied himself, loaded the belt, aimed 4 feet high, 6 inches left, and fired. The first burst missed, all 7 rounds. The observers shifted, whispered. Holloway didn't react, adjusted his aim, accounted for barrel heat, fired again. The second burst, 5th round, penetration. But no flash, no detonation. The incendiary charge failed. Silence. Major Kramer smiled. "Sergeant Holloway, I believe that concludes your demonstration." Holloway stared at the Panther. The mathematics were right. The penetration had occurred, but the incendiary failed. Why? The ordnance specialist stepped forward. The M8 round requires sufficient velocity for the friction to ignite the incendiary compound. At 800 yards, the bullet has lost too much velocity. The charge won't ignite reliably. That's why these rounds are designed for aircraft use. High velocity, close-range engagements. Holloway's mind raced. The first tank he destroyed had been at 850 yards. The round had detonated. Why had it worked then, but not now? Then he remembered. The first shot, the Panzer IV. Engine running, heat, fuel vapors. The incendiary charge might not have ignited from friction. It might have ignited from environmental factors. Hot engine, combustible atmosphere. He turned to the specialist. What if the target is a running vehicle? Active engine. Heat source present? The specialist paused. Theoretically, yes. The additional heat could trigger ignition at extended ranges. But we can't test that here. These are destroyed vehicles.
Cold engines. No fuel. Patterson stepped forward. Major Kramer, I've seen enough. The sergeant demonstrated successful penetration at all three ranges. The incendiary effect is confirmed at 400 and 600 yards. The 800-yard shot achieved penetration even without detonation. That alone is significant. A 50-caliber machine gun penetrating Panther armor? Even without the incendiary effect, that's valuable intelligence. Kramer shook his head. Valuable intelligence isn't a combat doctrine. I'm not authorizing widespread use of expensive ammunition based on partially successful results. Then something unexpected happened. Captain Aldrich stepped forward. Sir, permission to speak? Kramer nodded. Captain, I've observed Sergeant Holloway in actual combat conditions. 2 days ago, he destroyed a Panzer IV at 850 yards. The vehicle was operational, engine running. The incendiary effect was complete. Catastrophic kill. Total crew loss. These static tests don't replicate battlefield conditions. Kramer turned to Aldrich. You're saying we should base procurement decisions on anecdotal evidence? I'm saying we should base decisions on results. The 28th Infantry lost 6,000 men because we couldn't kill German armor. Sergeant Holloway has demonstrated a method to kill armor with existing resources at minimal cost. Whether the incendiary ignites at 800 yards or not is secondary to the fact that we can now engage tanks at ranges previously considered impossible for machine guns. Patterson added, Sir, the cost analysis alone justifies limited deployment. Each M8 round costs $1.75. Each German tank costs minimum 50,000. Even if we need 50 rounds per kill, that's still a 20,000 to 1 cost advantage. And we're not proposing this replace standard anti-tank weapons. We're proposing it as a supplemental capability. Major Kramer was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Limited deployment, 3 platoons, 50 rounds per gun. Sergeant Holloway will personally train designated gunners. After 2 weeks of combat evaluation, we'll review the results. If casualty rates don't improve, if tank kills don't increase, this program is terminated. Understood? Yes, sir. But there was a condition. Kramer continued. Sergeant, you wanted this responsibility. Now you own it. Every round fired is your accountability. Every failed engagement is your failure. If this doesn't work, if American soldiers die because we diverted resources to your experiment, that's on you. Can you live with that? Holloway met his eyes. Sir, I can live with trying and failing. I can't live with not trying and watching men die. Good answer. Don't make me regret this. Within 24 hours, Holloway began training 8 M2 gunners from various companies. Ages 19 to 34. Farm boys, factory workers, college students. He taught them the mathematics first. Range estimation using geometry. Bullet drop compensation. Wind reading. One of them, a 19-year-old from Nebraska, threw down his pencil in frustration. I can't do this math. I barely passed high school. Holloway picked up the pencil, handed it back. Did you hunt growing up? Yes, Sergeant. Did you lead ducks in flight? Aim where they were going to be. Yes, Sergeant. That's ballistic calculation.
You already know how to do this. You just never called it mathematics. By December 21st, all 8 gunners could hit stationary targets at 600 yards. 6 out of 8 could do it at 800 yards. 3 could do it at 1,000. The doctrine was spreading. December 23rd, Holloway students achieved their first kills. 4 German vehicles destroyed in one day. 2 half-tracks, 2 Panzer IVs. All confirmed, all using the techniques Holloway had taught. Total American casualties in those engagements? 3 wounded, 0 dead. The week before, similar engagements had resulted in average 47 casualties, including 18 dead. The numbers spoke for themselves. By December 31st, 11 German armored vehicles had been eliminated by machine gun fire. A captured German intelligence report reached division headquarters. Multiple incidents of armored vehicle destruction by small caliber fire. Estimate 3 to 4 specialized anti-tank teams operating at extended ranges. Recommend increased vigilance. The Germans thought multiple units were responsible. They didn't realize it was one man who taught 8 others. 8 who would teach 80. The mathematics of force multiplication. But success brought new problems. As word spread, German tank commanders changed their tactics. They stopped operating within 1,000 yards of American positions during daylight. Movement restricted to night, fog, any condition that might hide them from the invisible enemy. And the Germans were deploying counter-sniper teams. Specialist hunters, with orders to find and eliminate American anti-tank gunners. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Because when you change the rules of warfare, the enemy adapts. And in Part 3, we'll see exactly how the Wehrmacht responded when they finally understood what was killing their tanks. When they identified Garrett Holloway specifically. When they sent their best soldiers with one mission: kill the American machinist who'd turned mathematics into the deadliest weapon on the Western Front. The war was about to get personal. December 1944. A machinist from Akron, Ohio, had discovered that M8 armor-piercing incendiary rounds could kill German tanks. Garrett Holloway proved it worked. Destroyed 1 Panzer. Then trained 8 gunners. Those 8 destroyed 11 more vehicles in 2 weeks. The technique spread. But Major Kramer's approval came with a warning. Limited deployment. 2 weeks evaluation. If it failed, program terminated. Holloway owned every success and every failure. By December 31st, the evaluation period was ending. 11 confirmed kills. 3 wounded Americans. 0 dead. The numbers proved the concept worked, but numbers also attracted attention. German intelligence was analyzing the pattern. Armored vehicles exploding from small caliber fire. No anti-tank weapons visible. No bazooka teams reported. Something new was killing their tanks, and the Wehrmacht wanted answers. This was no longer an experiment. This was war. January 1945. German 6th Panzer Army Headquarters. Oberst Heinrich Müller studied the casualty reports with growing alarm. 43 years old, veteran of Poland, France, Russia. He'd seen every anti-tank weapon the Allies possessed. Bazookas, tank destroyers, artillery, fighter bombers. But this was different. 15 armored vehicles destroyed in 30 days. All within one sector. All with the same signature. Small caliber penetration, engine deck hits, catastrophic internal fires. The entry wounds measured 12.7 millimeters, 50 caliber, American machine gun ammunition. Moeller called his intelligence officer, Hauptmann Richter. Explain to me how machine guns are destroying Panther tanks. Richter spread reconnaissance photos across the table. Herr Oberst, we've identified the pattern. American M2 Browning positions engaging at extreme range, 600 to 1,000 meters. They are not using standard ammunition. Analysis of recovered fragments suggests armor-piercing incendiary rounds, aircraft ammunition. Moeller stared at the photos. They're using aircraft bullets against tanks? It's working, Herr Oberst. Our crews are terrified. They refuse to operate within 1,000 meters of American lines during daylight. Tank availability has dropped 47% in this sector alone. The German response was immediate. New tactical orders distributed to all panzer units.
Avoid engagement within 1,000 meters. Move only at night or in heavy fog. Increase infantry screening. Deploy counter-sniper teams to eliminate American machine gun positions. But the orders revealed something crucial. Fear. The Wehrmacht was afraid. Not of American armor, not of American artillery, of machine guns. January 3rd. Counter-sniper team deployed. 6 men, SS-trained, expert marksmen. Their mission was specific. Find American anti-tank gunners. Kill them. Holloway's war just became personal. But this wasn't his only problem. January 5th. Disaster struck. Private James Morrison, 22 years old, one of Holloway's trained gunners, 3rd Platoon, Easy Company. He'd achieved 2 confirmed tank kills in 3 days. Morrison spotted German armor at 900 yards. A Panther. Hull-down position. He calculated bullet drop. Compensated for wind. Fired. 7-round burst. The rounds penetrated, but not the Panther. They hit an American Sherman tank positioned 500 yards beyond the German position. Morrison hadn't seen it through the smoke. The Sherman's ammunition cooked off, exploded. 4 Americans killed instantly. The investigation was brutal. Captain Aldrich convened an immediate review board. How did this happen, Sergeant Holloway? Sir, limited visibility. Smoke from artillery. Private Morrison couldn't see past the primary target. So your technique requires perfect visibility? No, sir, but it requires clear fields of fire, like any precision weapon. This isn't about visibility. This is about your gunners engaging targets they can't properly identify. The friendly fire incident gave Major Kramer exactly what he needed. Emergency meeting, January 6th, Division Headquarters. Kramer stood before a room of senior officers. Gentlemen, 4 American soldiers are dead because we authorized use of experimental ammunition by inadequately trained personnel. This program was supposed to reduce casualties, not cause them. I'm recommending immediate termination. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson interrupted. Major, 1 incident doesn't negate 34 confirmed enemy kills. The casualty ratio is still overwhelmingly positive. Kramer's voice rose. We killed our own men. How is that positive? Patterson remained calm. Friendly fire is tragic, but not unique to this program. Artillery kills friendly forces. Airstrikes hit friendly positions. We don't terminate those programs. We improve training and procedures. This isn't artillery. This is sergeants making split-second decisions at extreme range with inadequate supervision. The Army doesn't work this way. Holloway sat in silence, listening, watching his program die. 4 dead Americans. His responsibility. His accountability. He'd accepted that burden from Kramer. Now he was paying for it. But then Patterson spoke directly to him. Sergeant Holloway, can you prevent this from happening again? Holloway met his eyes. Yes, sir. How? Improve target identification protocols. Mandatory spotter system. 2-man teams.
primary gunner, and dedicated spotter with binoculars. No engagement without positive identification of target and clear confirmation no friendly forces in the line of fire. Patterson turned to Kramer. "There's your solution. Implement it." Kramer shook his head. "One mistake like this, and the entire program's credibility is destroyed. We can't afford another incident." "Then we won't have another incident," Holloway said quietly. "Because I'll personally supervise every gunner in every engagement until they can do this in their sleep." "Sir, give me one more chance. One more battle. If we fail, I'll resign and recommend program termination myself." The room went silent. Finally, Kramer spoke. "Operation Veritable begins in 3 weeks. British and Canadian forces pushing through the Reichswald forest. 2nd Armored Division provides flank support. You'll have your chance there, Sergeant. One chance. But this time you're not just accountable for your own kills. You're accountable for everyone you trained, every engagement, every round fired. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Then God help you if you fail." January 28th, 1945. 0530 hours. Reichswald Forest, Germany. Operation Veritable, the largest British-Canadian offensive since D-Day. 200,000 Allied troops. 35,000 vehicles. Objective: smash through the Siegfried Line, reach the Rhine River, end the war. 2nd Armored Division held the southern flank. 1,500 men, 40 tanks, and 8 M2 Browning gunners trained by Garrett Holloway. The Wehrmacht threw everything they had at Operation Veritable. 6th Panzer Army, entire divisions, Panthers, Tigers, Jagd Panthers. This wasn't defensive warfare. This was Germany's last desperate counterattack. The tank battle began at 0600 hours. Holloway positioned himself on a small rise. 1,200 yards of clear field of fire. His M2 ready. Belt loaded. 4 M8 API-1 armor-piercing 1 tracer. The pattern he'd perfected. Dixon beside him with binoculars. Through the morning fog, movement. German armor. 5 Panthers advancing in formation. Range 1,000 yards. Dixon called targets. Lead Panther, bearing 090. Range 1,000. No friendlies visible. Holloway calculated. 72 inches bullet drop. 8 miles per hour wind. 10 inches drift. He aimed. Fired. First burst missed. Adjusted. Fired again. 7th round of the second burst. Penetration. The lead Panther's engine deck erupted in flames. Crew bailed. Vehicle destroyed. Switch targets. 2nd Panther. Range 950 yards. Bearing 085. Clear. Holloway swung the M2. Aimed. Fired. 4 rounds. Penetration. Fire. 2 tanks burning. 300 yards to his left, Corporal James Chen, one of Holloway's students, engaged the 3rd Panther. Chen was 23, farm kid from California. He'd scored 3 kills in the past 2 weeks. Range 800 yards. Chen fired. His spotter confirmed no friendlies. The burst caught the Panther's turret ring, the thin metal where the turret connected to the hull. 20 millimeters. The M8 round penetrated, detonated inside. The turret jammed, couldn't rotate. The Panther tried to withdraw. Chen fired again. Engine deck. Flames. 3 tanks down. The 4th and 5th Panthers retreated, changed position, tried to flank. But Holloway had positioned his gunners in overlapping fields of fire. Every retreat route covered. The Panthers couldn't escape. Sergeant Bill Hayes engaged from the right flank. 600 yards. Perfect angle on the 4th Panther's rear armor. 3-round burst. Penetration. Fire. 4 tanks destroyed. The 5th Panther commander saw his entire formation burning. Made the only logical decision. Surrendered. White flag from the turret hatch. The battle lasted 11 minutes. 5 German Panthers engaged, 4 destroyed, 1 captured, 0 American casualties. But this was just one engagement. Across the entire Operation Veritable Front, Holloway's trained gunners were achieving similar results. By 0900 hours, 16 German armored vehicles destroyed by 50 caliber fire. By noon, 23. By 1700 hours, 31. The Germans couldn't understand what was happening. Their armor advantage was evaporating. Tanks that had dominated European battlefields for 5 years were burning from machine gun fire. Psychological impact was devastating. German tank crews were abandoning vehicles without fighting, retreating from positions they should have held. The 6th Panzer Army's combat effectiveness collapsed. Not from lack of equipment, from lack of will. Fear is a weapon. Holloway had weaponized mathematics. The Germans weaponized their own terror. February 2nd, Operation Veritable, 5th day. The British and Canadian forces broke through the Siegfried Line. German resistance crumbled. Not because Allied tanks were superior. Not because Allied artillery was overwhelming. Because German armor refused to engage. 57 German tanks destroyed by machine gun fire in 5 days. American casualties in those engagements averaged 3 wounded per battle. Traditional anti-tank operations averaged 12 killed, 34 wounded per engagement. The mathematics were undeniable. Holloway's technique saved approximately 450 American lives in 5 days. 450 families who wouldn't receive death notifications. The program worked. News of the success spread rapidly. Stars and Stripes newspaper ran a front-page story. Machine gunners become tank killers. The article didn't name Holloway specifically, but described the technique in detail. Within a week, every M2 gunner in the European theater was requesting M8 API ammunition. Within 2 weeks, the technique was being taught at training facilities in England. Within a month, it became standard doctrine. The United States Army officially designated the tactic Precision Anti-Armor Engagement. Manual updated. Training films produced. But soldiers called it something else. Holloway's method. One man's obsession with precision had changed modern warfare. Cost analysis showed stunning results. Traditional anti-tank operations cost approximately $12,000 per enemy vehicle destroyed, when accounting for ammunition, equipment losses, and casualty replacement. Holloway's method cost less than $100 per kill. 120 to 1 cost advantage. In a war measured by industrial output, that advantage was decisive. By March 1945, German armor losses exceeded replacement capacity. Not because factories couldn't produce tanks, because crews refused to operate them. Morale collapsed. Desertion rates spiked. The Wehrmacht's armored advantage, built over 5 years of warfare, destroyed in 2 months by a machinist from Ohio who understood that precision defeats strength when mathematics guides the effort. From an experiment threatened with termination to standard doctrine. From one man with an unauthorized idea to hundreds of gunners saving thousands of lives. Garrett Holloway had proven that innovation doesn't require rank or authority. It requires being right. But what happened to the man himself? The machinist who became the most effective anti-tank soldier in the European theater. The numbers tell part of his story. 43 confirmed kills, 253 enemy casualties, 450 American lives saved. But numbers don't capture what war does to a man's soul when he becomes very, very good at killing. In Part 4, we'll discover what happened after the mathematics stopped mattering, after the shooting ended, after Garrett Holloway returned to a country that didn't understand what precision had cost him. This story has one final chapter, the one nobody talks about, the price of being necessary. From a machinist's workshop in Akron to the battlefields of Europe, from an idea branded insane to standard military doctrine, Garrett Holloway proved that M8 armor-piercing incendiary rounds could kill tanks. He trained gunners. They destroyed 57 German armored vehicles in 5 days during Operation Veritable, saved 450 American lives, changed the mathematics of armored warfare forever. The technique spread across the entire European theater. Every M2 gunner requested M8 ammunition. The Wehrmacht's armor advantage collapsed, not from superior firepower, but from fear. One man's obsession with precision had altered the course of the war. But every story has an ending. And this one has a twist nobody saw coming. Because sometimes the cost of being right is higher than anyone imagined. And sometimes the man who changes everything just wants to be forgotten. May 7th, 1945. Germany surrendered. The war in Europe ended. Garrett Holloway had been in combat for 105 consecutive days, 43 confirmed tank kills, 253 enemy casualties, 147 pounds body weight, down 16 pounds from arrival. His hands trembled constantly now, not from fear, from something broken inside that would never fully heal. June 19th, 1945. Holloway arrived in Akron, Ohio by train. His father met him at the station. They didn't speak much. What could be said? Holloway went back to work at Goodyear Tire on June 25th. Same lathe, same tolerances, same precision work. As if nothing had changed, except everything had changed. For 40 years, Garrett Holloway never discussed the war. When neighbors asked if he'd served, he said yes. When they asked what he'd done, he said machine gunner. That was all. He met Ruth Bennett at a church social in October 1945. Married her March 1946. Had 4 children over the next 10 years. Worked at Goodyear for 37 years. Retired 1982. A quiet life. A normal life. The kind of life where nobody knows you changed history. November 11th, 1967. Veterans Day, Cleveland, Ohio. Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall. Holloway was 50 years old now. Gray hair, reading glasses, 20 pounds heavier than combat weight. He attended because his son asked. Sat alone in a corner until a voice spoke in accented English. "You were 2nd Armored Division." Holloway looked up. A man stood there, maybe 2 years younger, slight German accent. "Yes, Rhine Crossing, March 1945. "Yes." The man sat down, extended his hand. "Kurt Brenner. I was corporal. 6th Panzer Division, defensive positions east of Remagen." Holloway stared at the hand, then shook it. Brenner's grip was firm. "You were machine gunner, M2 Browning." "Yes." Brenner smiled without humor. "You killed my friends. 7 tanks in 2 days, March 21st through 23rd. I watched them burn." Silence. Holloway met Brenner's eyes. "I killed many Germans, following orders. Like you." Brenner nodded slowly. 43 tanks. I saw the records after war. all destroyed by one gunner. You? Yes. Brenner's face went pale. That's 200 men, maybe more. I've calculated it at 253, including infantry kills. You counted? I'm a machinist. I count everything. They sat in silence. Then Brenner spoke quietly. I immigrated to America in 1951, came to Cleveland, started over. But I still dream about Rhine crossing, about watching tanks explode, about not understanding how you were killing us. Holloway's voice was barely audible. War made us do terrible things.
Yes, war did that, not us. We were soldiers. Brenner stood, extended his hand again. I cannot forgive what you did, but I understand you had no choice. Same as me. Holloway stood, shook the German's hand. I cannot forgive myself either, but I did what mathematics demanded. Every tank I killed saved American lives. That was the arithmetic. Cold arithmetic. Yes, but necessary arithmetic. Two men, different sides, same suffering. War doesn't create heroes. It creates survivors who carry weight. But Holloway's real legacy wasn't in handshakes or reconciliation. It was in the ammunition that outlived him. The M8 armor-piercing incendiary round became the M20 API in 1953. Same principle, improved incendiary compound, higher reliability. By 1960, it was standard issue across NATO forces. Every Allied nation adopted the doctrine Holloway had proven: machine guns as supplemental anti-armor weapons. The technique was taught at every military academy: West Point, Sandhurst, St. Cyr. The mathematics Holloway had calculated in frozen foxholes became required coursework. Korea, 1950. M2 Browning gunners using M20 API destroyed 137 North Korean T-34 tanks. Vietnam, 1965 to 1973. The same technique killed estimated 400 enemy armored vehicles. Desert Storm, 1991. Modern M2s with updated API ammunition, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. The principle never changed. Identify vulnerable points. Calculate ballistics. Fire with precision. Holloway's method is still being used today, 79 years after he fired his first shot. Current M33 API ammunition traces its lineage directly to the M8 rounds Holloway requisitioned without authorization. Total estimated armored vehicles destroyed using variations of Holloway's technique across all conflicts, 1945 to 2024, over 12,000. Total estimated lives saved by reducing armor effectiveness and shortening conflicts? Conservatively, 40,000 American and Allied soldiers. All because a machinist understood that precision thinking defeats superior firepower when mathematics guides the effort. But the technical legacy is only half the story. The real lesson is deeper. Innovation doesn't require rank. It requires being right. Holloway was a sergeant. No engineering degree. No formal ballistics training. Just a machinist who understood tolerances and trajectories. The Army's initial response? Rejection, threats of court-martial, accusations of theft. Major Kramer represented the institutional resistance that kills innovation. He wasn't evil. He was cautious, risk-averse, protecting the system. But systems that prioritize protocol over results don't win wars. They lose them slowly. Holloway succeeded because he refused to accept that answer. He broke rules, obtained unauthorized ammunition, conducted unapproved tests,
disobeyed direct orders. And he was right. That's the lesson bureaucracies hate learning. Sometimes the rule book is wrong. Sometimes the person without credentials knows more than the expert. Sometimes the crazy idea works. History is filled with similar stories. Billy Mitchell proved air power could sink battleships. The Navy court-martialed him. Chester Nimitz advocated for aircraft carriers over battleships. The establishment ridiculed him. John Boyd developed energy maneuverability theory that revolutionized fighter tactics. The Air Force tried to silence him. The pattern repeats. Innovator proposes unconventional solution. System rejects it. Innovator proves it anyway. System reluctantly adopts it, then takes credit. But here's what matters. Those innovators changed warfare, saved lives, won wars. Not because they followed rules, because they understood when rules needed breaking. And that lesson applies today. In military innovation, in corporate strategy, in technological development. The next breakthrough won't come from committees following established procedures. It'll come from someone willing to test the crazy idea everyone else dismissed. And there's one final detail most people don't know about Garrett Holloway's story. In 1995, Holloway donated his wartime notebook to the Army Ordnance Museum. The one where he'd recorded every kill, every calculation, every lesson learned. Museum curators discovered something unexpected in the final pages. After the last entry, March 23, 1945, there were blank pages, except one. Written in 1967, after meeting Kurt Brenner. The entry read, "Today I met Corporal Brenner, one of the men I tried to kill. We shook hands, spoke as equals. I realized something I should have known 40 years ago. Mathematics can calculate bullet trajectories, but it cannot calculate the worth of a human life. I killed 253 men to save American lives." The arithmetic was sound. But arithmetic doesn't account for mothers, wives, children. The Germans I killed were fathers, brothers, sons, just like the Americans I saved. War forced me to choose. I chose my countrymen. I would make the same choice again, but I will never call it noble. Necessary and noble are different things. I pray my children never have to learn that difference. That entry wasn't included in official histories, wasn't mentioned in military manuals. But it's the most important thing Garrett Holloway ever wrote, because it proves that the man who mastered the mathematics of killing never forgot the cost of being right. From a machinist's workshop to changing modern warfare. From unauthorized experiments to saving 40,000 lives across 8 decades. Garrett Holloway proved that precision thinking defeats superior strength when courage guides the mathematics. He taught us that innovation requires the willingness to be called crazy, that expertise matters less than being right, that following rules is easier than breaking them, for good reason, and that sometimes the most necessary actions carry the heaviest burdens. 43 tanks destroyed, 253 enemy casualties, 450 American lives saved in 5 days, 12,000 armored vehicles destroyed using his technique over 79 years, 40,000 Allied lives saved across multiple conflicts. Those are the numbers. But numbers don't measure what matters most. The real legacy is this. One man who refused to accept that soldiers had to die because the system wouldn't adapt. One man who proved that thinking differently saves lives. One man who carried the weight of being necessary until the day he died. That's not just military history. That's a lesson for anyone facing impossible problems with inadequate tools. Don't complain about what you don't have. Optimize what you do have. Calculate the variables. Execute with precision. And never stop until the job is done. Because sometimes the craziest idea is the one that changes everything. And sometimes being right means being willing to be wrong about everything except the mathematics. Measure twice, cut once, and never ever guess. That was Garrett Holloway's principle in the machine shop. It became his principle in war. And it should be ours in everything we do. Because precision thinking doesn't just win battles, it saves lives. And that mathematics is too important to remain forgotten.